This is going to be a little bit different to earlier. So earlier we were digging into Corinthians. We'll do a bit more of that later. Now we're going to dig into something a little bit less, still as important, but it's a bit more, how can I put this? If you like a structured talk, this is going to appeal to you more than my this morning's talk. I actually love research. Okay, so I love research as well as loving the Bible, as well as loving Jesus. I also like research. Now, I used to work for the Church of England, and I had the grand title, you'll giggle, of the National Mission and Evangelism Advisor for the Church of England. It was a one-woman job. There were vast teams and swathes of people when it came to property. But when it came to mission and evangelism, they only needed one person. So, pardon?
Property was all men, though, wasn't it?
Yeah. Nice. But that was quite a bit. I used to say, look, if I was the head of marketing, which sometimes it felt like it was that equivalent job in a company. So if I was the head of marketing, then on a Monday morning on my desk would arrive this beautiful, wasn't it, portfolio of all the stats of all my shops, say of Boots, the chemist. And then I'd also probably have Superdrug and Savers. And I'd know exactly what we were doing, what our best products were, which stores were operating really well, which ones had problems, and I could make my decisions on some hard evidence. We were lucky if we got the October count for the year before, the year following. And by then it was out of date, and it was people's best guesstimates. Because you'd see people filling it in, and as their parish share depended on what numbers they put down, it was definitely a best guesstimate. And I was like, this is crazy. And so I was going off to do this denominational leaders summit with Roy Crown and with Steve Clifford from the EA and Hope. I was in the Church of England at the time. And we were going to get all these leaders together. Doesn't it sound grand? I love it when we come with grand titles, denominational leaders summit. Anyway, so we were getting all these people together, and we were going to be there for a few days in the Lake District, thinking about putting evangelism back at the heart of the church. So I was like, there's a bit of a problem. I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to get together and everyone's going to bring their anecdotes. Because it's what we always do. You know, the person we met on the bus next last week, or what's happening. And then we're going to extrapolate our whole strategy. I said, could we please do some research? And I'm like, what do you mean, Rachel? Anyway, they agreed, and we did this research in 2015. It was called Talking Jesus. Some of you have heard me talk a bit about it before, haven't you? Wave at me if you have. Okay. Not all of you, so that's good. And so we did this in 2015, and then we redid it in 2022. And I genuinely think of all the things that I've been involved in, this one would be the thing that I'd love to see live on past me, that we keep doing this research. Because it was powerful in explaining what's happening outside the church. So this is where we take a real switch and we're beginning to look outside the church. So I'll tell you a little bit about how we did it. And then what I've got for you today is I've got the young adult data because it's particularly important. So this research was done by, not by me. I didn't stand in the street asking people questions. It was done by a really big polling company called Savanta Comres. It's a 10-minute online survey. It covered 4,000 UK adults, of which 3,115, just to be precise, were a nationally representative sample. That means they make up the soup of the UK. If you had a recipe in your recipe book that was for the UK, you'd know how many carrots to put in and how much like coriander to make up a perfect recipe that's equal to the UK. That's how we do weighted data. So it has enough people from different regions, of different ethnic groups, across the gender divide, like all those things are well represented so that the data that you have, you can say the UK. Does that make sense? In the UK. And then because the sample was reasonably big, I've been able to break out like Northern Ireland, Scotland, Wales, London, things like young adults, and so that we can do deep dives into some distinct areas of the country, which is very exciting if you're someone like me. But the reason that's exciting is we can then look at what God is doing, and then we can see how we could join in what he's already doing. And then we had a boost sample. Most of it is not this sample of 917. I love the randomness of the numbers, practicing Christians. When we're looking at that, I'll shout and you can wave at me. But don't worry, we'll make it fun as we go through. Because you're like, what have I come to today? So first of all, what's happening outside in the UK when it comes to... Did anyone read the headlines of when we did the the census in the country. Do you remember the headline? What was the big headline? Yeah, no longer a Christian country. Yeah, great. Because we dipped under 50% of the country saying that they were Christian. It wasn't a surprise to us. We'd already seen that. And so this is going to be hard for you. So I'm going to shout out the big numbers. Don't worry about the small numbers because, if you can't read it, I'll shout out the big things. So, but here, what you can see, I feel like the weather lady when I do this. Coming in on a northeasterly. So this is actually an age break, okay, of all the different age brackets. So you can see that this is not a surprise of what happens when we look at Christian. 63% of the people in the country who are aged over 64 would still say that they are a Christian. But only 29% of those aged 18 to 24 would say that they're Christian. Everything else is a perfect drop-off, generation by generation by generation. You're like, hang on a minute, I thought this was going to be encouraging. Don't worry, it's going to be. So that is an interesting starter. This means that you're already prepared for when the next census falls. So what does it actually tell us? This tells us that something called cultural Christianity is actually moving out. I feel like it's almost like a weather front. The weather front of cultural Christianity is moving out. What does that mean about the actual church, people like you and me? Are we moving out? What's really happening in that younger generation? Have a look at the bracket of no religion. So 54% of the 18 to 24-year-olds would say they're of no religion, and about 57% of the 25 to 34-year-olds would say that they have no religion. That's the new term that people are ticking. So that is a big growing term, but that doesn't mean they're not spiritual. A third of that group is spiritual. So we might need to examine something else. And so we came up with this term, which is a practicing Christian. It's a good one, isn't it? Not the first, I know, to come up with that term. So, if you were going to measure a practicing Christian as opposed to a cultural Christian, what might be some of the things you might try to look at? Church attendance, brilliant. Anything else? Reading the Bible.
Where you spend your money.
Where you're spending money and praying. So what we could measure in a poll were three things: whether or not you went to church regularly, whether you read your Bible, and whether you prayed. And it was reading your Bible that really chops this. It absolutely, it takes a huge slice out. When you do that, 6% of the UK population are regularly part of a worshipping community, regularly praying, regularly reading their Bibles. And you might be like, Rachel, what just happened to your numbers? But the good news on this figure is that this has stayed steady since 2015. So the church, the actual Church of Jesus Christ, is not in decline. Okay? Cultural Christianity is in decline, but the Church of Jesus Christ, those of us who are like us in this room, is not in decline. It has not declined in 7 years. And the other really exciting thing is it hasn't declined generationally. So the generational decline is cultural, but this group holds steady even when you get to your 18 to 24-year-olds. There are as many 18 to 24-year-olds for their generational cohort. We have an aging population, so we have less of them in the population. But there is as many of them as there are 64 pluses who would meet that category. So that's exciting, isn't it? So what is in decline is cultural Christianity. What that means is we have a change of mission field, but we haven't got a change of mission team. Change of mission field, because when you're discussing Christian faith with a cultural Christian, they've got more understanding of what you're talking about. This is a bit like, you know how the Apostle Paul did his mission. You read in his in Acts, don't you? When he was in one place, he started with the Jews. When he started with the Jews, he started with a group of people who are looking for a Messiah. So, hello, Jesus is your Messiah. No good if he goes off to a pagan group of people in Corinth and says, Jesus is your Messiah. My what? Because they're not looking for a Messiah. So, cultural Christianity is a phenomenon that we have had, I think, and it's a phenomenon that's moving. But the big issue is that we have a change of mission field. So when you are talking to somebody who is age 64 plus about Jesus, they will know about Noah's Ark. Probably. They will probably know the Lord's Prayer. and a whole pile of other things. If you're talking to somebody who's younger, they're not likely to sort of recite you the Lord's Prayer or feel that they have a connection, as many of them, a connection to the Christian church or faith. So it's a different mission for it. So you have to swap and change how you are doing your mission. I know that sounds really obvious. And just suddenly you're like, that's obvious, Rachel. But often when we think about reaching the UK, we think, I'll do this. Whatever it is. I will run this. And this will meet all these people's needs. But people, particularly generationally, we are not one homogenous group. We're actually very distinct. And so we need to think about how we're reaching different people. So what's happening is that out of the number of Christians, people who tick Christian in the younger generation, more of them are practicing. Does that make sense? And that's why they're still holding up in the generational cohort. They're actively practicing. The other factor that's come into play is the ethnic factor. Have a look at the number of those of African descent who are 18 to 24-year-old practicing Christians. It's a real gift to our church that I think there's been a stronger wave of discipleship, particularly in places like our black majority churches. They have done a better job of passing the faith on to their children than we have in some of our white majority churches. This is now anecdote, not evidence. One of the guys who's a youth worker in a really large church in this country said, as children get older and they get into youth, they see the drop-off in some families where parents are like, well, if they don't want to come, they don't have to come. That is not something that some families are like, you need to come. This is our church family. This is what we do. And other families are like, well, if you choose not to, then that's up to you. The ones that then make it through often are the ones that their families said, you've got to, this is what we're doing. This is what we do as family. As a family, we come to church. You're part of our family. This is what we're going to do. And that's been a really noticeable difference. So there is a real gift to us that we're seeing in the younger generations in the diversity, which is a gift. This particularly plays in London. So if you look at London, London is actually, after Northern Ireland, the religious centre of the UK, which excites me as a church historian. Another one of my little things is I love church history. If you look at a lot of the church history movements when it comes to faith, often what happens in London, it spreads out. I would be very excited if the mix of what we've got in London at the moment spreads across the country, because London has more people. 10% of London are active and practicing Christians. Isn't that exciting? And that's for two reasons. The gift of our diversity. So 50% of London is white, 50% of London is non-white. So that we are the most diverse part of the country, and we are the youngest part of the country. And it's those two things, can you believe it? It's those two wonderful things that mean that London has more practicing Christians than the rest of the country. How exciting is that? And about 10% of a population, and this I need to find, is that you can change a culture. So often I think what we do in church is culture impacts us. Do you remember I was saying this morning about secular individualism? It comes in and it knocks us. And we need to be countercultural. We need to push back against it. And that means actually we could be a countercultural movement. There are actually enough of us. So there's not many other groups who've got that level of percentage of the UK population. And so we actually could be countercultural if we began to look at what that looked like together. But often, because we're not working as one big body, if we put all the Bible reading, praying, actively part of a Christian community people together, and we were front-footed, we actually could shape culture rather than responding to culture. That's exciting, isn't it? Yeah. And most of the time we're responding, we're back foot. And so we've been working a bit with London on how we might get more front foot. How do we do a London project that says we actually want to shape the culture? Yes.
So is that on the 10% or the 6% as well?
I think we could do it with 6. We certainly can do it with 10, and we could push up with 6. And I think if you think about that in a town or an area, how do you work united, like really united, to change the culture of where you live and to speak with one voice? And that can be under, I don't mind which umbrella. Grab an umbrella, make an umbrella up. Call it anything you like, but getting your leaders together who've got the same central tenets of faith and saying, rather than responding to the culture, what could we do in our town or area that makes us front foot and shape the culture? What are the things we want to change about where we are? It's exciting, isn't it? So normally we're responding, but actually we could be more front foot. We may not do all of these because... So it's the Bible, prayer, church. If you look at the Bible practice, the 18 to 24-year-olds, that actually there's many of them who've got really good, solid Bible practice, which is so exciting. And we need to. The Bible is, how can I put it? I feel the Bible is a distinctive we really need to own and help a younger generation with. But many of them have got it. They've got it in their rhythm to read the Bible. Even if they're beginning for the first time, it's getting people excited about reading the Bible. It's things like why reading the Bible in a year is so exciting. One of Annie, she'd read the Bible in a year. You're like, great. Getting people excited about the Bible because it forms our culture and our change. Right. We're now going to have a little look of how people think about Jesus. So you can see here what people describe Jesus as a normal human being. 29% 18 to 24-year-olds. Do you know, 25% of all ages. So it's a little bit higher. It's not massive. But God in human form is 22% of the 18 to 24-year-olds, 18% of the 25 to 34-year-olds, 20% all ages. It's not actually that radically different. So if we're having a conversation with somebody and we're asking, this is where we begin to unpack a little bit of, well, what does it mean to be a cultural Christian? Do you see? Because the cultural Christian is not understanding who Jesus is. They're just that I'm a Christian. When I go into hospital, I tick a form that says Church of England, but I'm not really sure why I do that. It's something that's been handed down to me. They haven't got a solid belief. And then I love a prophet or spiritual leader, not God. It's still 29% of the 18 to 24-year-olds, 30% of the 25 to 34-year-olds, 33% overall of our country would say that Jesus is a prophet. That's way higher than the Muslim population, by the way. The Muslim population would be about 5 to 6% of the country would be Muslim. That rises when you go younger. So it's about 12, 14% of when you go into the younger generations of Muslim. So we've got some really interesting mix that's coming down the line. But it's a lot more of the population who would say Jesus is a spiritual leader or a prophet. How interesting is that? Wouldn't you like a cup of tea with someone who thinks Jesus is a prophet? It's a great opener, is what do you think about Jesus? Do you see, when you're having a conversation with somebody, what do they think? Who do they think Jesus is? Because if they think he's a prophet, you're on to a winner. Have you ever read anything that prophet said? No. You know what? You can dismiss it, or you can follow it, or you can think about it, but wouldn't you be interested to at least find out what that prophet thought? And people have really positive views about Jesus. They think he is spiritual. I love it. They think he's a spiritual, loving, and they think he's peaceful. He has a very positive view. It's a little less positive. Can you see that? It's a little bit lower in the younger age bracket, but it's not fallen off a cliff face. Does that make sense? It's not fallen off a cliff face when you go younger. Now, I'm just going to see. Yes, I'm going to do 2 slides here. How about, some of you will have heard this, how about the resurrection? We're going to look at that this evening a little bit. We're going to go back onto the resurrection of Jesus. This is core, isn't it? Now, in a world of science that's probably been and maybe moved, we were supposed to give up anything like a belief in the resurrection. There's an amazing atheist grave in, is it Hampstead? It's an amazing atheist grave that just says dead, a gravestone. Somebody obviously decided they would make a real statement in their gravestone. But I quite like gravestones where you read those of where people have got that strong faith, asleep in Jesus. You know, it's a real contrast, isn't it? How many people in the population think that Jesus got up out of the grave? We're going to have a little look. Overall, it's 16%. How does that hold up when we look at the younger generations? 16% believe word for word. I'll go back to this one because you can see it on this one. Okay, so it's 16% word for word, but 29% have still ticked that they believe in the resurrection, but they put some content should not be taken literally. So basically what I call them is wobble factor believers. So they've got some belief that Jesus rose from the dead, but they're not solid. If you add those two together, that is 44% of the population who think Jesus rose from the dead. Yes, that is a lot. That's what I thought when I read it. I agree. Everyone was like, oh, I don't know. This is one of the reasons we had to redo the research the first time round that we did it, because none of us could believe it. Well, where are all those people? Because they're not in church on Sunday. But they are a lot nearer to us, aren't they, than we thought? Does that make sense? So what we do when we do this is I think sometimes we think, we're over here, we're going on mission over there, but we haven't done any homework about what over there looks like. Do you see? And then when we go over there, we discover actually these people are a lot nearer us than we thought. And this even holds up in a younger generation, in a younger demographic. 16% and 28% of the 18 to 24-year-olds. Again, when you come to London, it's like 25% of London, or 23%, should remember, definitely believe in the resurrection word for word as written in the Bible. Now you think of a tube train. Sometimes I do this, I look down the tube train. And often when I'm sitting on a tube train or bus, I think I'm the only Christian. And then I do the maths, and I go, actually I know that allows 10% of you are actually practicing as much as I am. You're part of a worshipping church community, you're praying, you're reading the Bible. And I know about 23% of you actually believe word for word that Jesus rose from the dead. That changes that tube train. It's just that I don't know who they are, because I haven't had a chat. But I do remember once on a tube, and I was having a chat with a woman opposite. I think when the tube stops a bit, you get the opportunity to chat to somebody. We do it when the tube stops, it's a bit hot, strange things happen, and then you have a chat. So there's me, and we're both edging towards, I'm edging towards a Christian conversation, and then I suddenly realised she was doing the same, and then I kind of smiled and went, are you a Christian? And she said, yes. She said, are you? I said, yes. I said, oh, isn't that great? Well, it's really nice to meet you. And we'll carry on with our little ride on the Elizabeth line. We were both doing that, that, and then I went, oh, you're a Christian and I'm a Christian. It was really comic. Because I imagine, we often imagine there's nobody else who believes what I believe on that tube train. But it's not true. I remember hearing a cracking conversation, two girls on the bus the other day, and they were both young, and one of them was having a cracking, they were both explaining how their mothers were complaining that they were always out. My mum always complains. My mum always complains. Oh, well, I'm always out. Oh, well, I'm always out at church. My mum's always complaining because I'm always out at church. Oh, what do you do at church? Oh, this is what I do at church. Great. She's doing a great job. Just carry on praying. Now, there's so much more of that interaction than we ever know is happening because we imagine things, but this tells us how close people are. I want to talk to the people who believe something in the resurrection because I want to tell them it's for real. It's solid. It's absolutely convinced, rock-solid truth that will not wobble. And if they build their life on it, they know they're building for eternity. How exciting would that be? So I want to meet all those people. And do you know what? A lot of them they're also young as well as old. That is staggering. So this thing of cultural Christianity is not actually playing out as much as we think it is. Do you see? When it comes to our mission field. There's still a vast number of people who are really close to us when it comes to the resurrection. Okay, so we've seen that one. Lovely. Okay, right, we're going to go a little bit further outside now, and we are going to look at... It's all right, I'm going the wrong way here. Oh, yes. This is going to be really obvious. And I wonder if you can imagine if there's some difference here as well. If you wanted to find out about the weather today, where did you go to look? Yeah, the weather app. If you want to go on holiday, where would you find out about going to Madrid? Okay. Where would you go to find out about, I don't know, almost everything, let's be honest. So when we asked non-Christians where they'd go to find out about Jesus, what did they say? Yeah, great. Oh, well, you'll never see it, so don't worry about it. It says, it's far too small. So it does say Google, but if you are younger, it's YouTube. So if you are aged 18 to 24, 22 and 24, 16% would search on YouTube. A further 26 would search on Google. So if we want to relate, particularly to a younger generation, about the Christian faith, a lot of them would search for that on YouTube and Google. I'm going to be poor at this because I'm not a digital native. So one of the things we need to do as a group is release the people who are good at this to be great at it, but then support them because it's actually quite a world when you're out there. It can be a vicious world, can't it? But how could we release a younger generation of missionaries to be truly missional in the places where their generation would look for faith? That's an interesting question, isn't it? One of the guys who's come to faith in our church was an atheist. He's also a gamer on YouTube. And he has lots of followers. So he's now a gamer and a follower of Jesus on YouTube. And he has lots of conversations now because he came to faith from being an atheist. And people are really interested in that. So he adds into gaming Jesus. But he's going to be a much better missionary to gamers than I am. And he's going to do it through the means. You can almost hear the Apostle Paul, can't you? To some I became. But we've got someone with that skill. What we need to do is put support around them and then help them to communicate in a way that makes sense to their generation. But don't worry, there are other things on here. Visiting an open church or cathedral is actually really big for the 25 to 34-year-olds. There's something about some of our open spaces and places and the idea, I don't know if you know, the idea of beauty, the appeal of beautiful, the appeal of of particularly old architecture that has actually regained an interest in that group. Reading the Bible, you've got to love it, haven't you? Reading the Bible comes in. 20% of 18 to 24-year-olds said they would read a Bible if they were looking for the Christian faith. 27% of 25 to 30-year-olds said they would read a Bible if they were going to find out more about the Christian faith. And 22% of all ages. It's really intriguing, isn't it? Nez is up at Loughborough. Nez Pioneer, Collins from the Pioneer Network. They have a student church at Loughborough University. It has 100 students in it. They had Bibles at the back of their church. They discovered the Bibles kept disappearing. They're like, where are all our Bibles going? I mean, surely everyone's got a Bible. And then they discovered that what was happening is non-Christian students were popping into the back of church. They weren't coming to church. They were just coming to pick up a Bible and then to go. When they'd read the Bible, they returned. So much so that they're now just stacking up on Bibles. So this is where this has come from. We did some research with YWAM on the streets in urban city centres, particularly with younger generations, asking them about the Bible. Had they read a Bible? Did they have a Bible? What did they think of the Bible? What mattered about a Bible if they were going to read a Bible? Did the language matter? Did the version matter? What mattered if I was going to help them to get the life of Jesus in their hands in a relevant way? Shall I tell you the one thing that mattered? Design. And that's okay. It's a language thing. Do not hand me something that looks like it is of no value, because design for that, do you see, it's cultural. So if you remember what I was saying about the push this morning, we need to push. When we're doing discipleship and church, we're pushing against secular individualism and a lot of things in the culture. When we're doing mission and evangelism, you've got to work with the culture to the degree that you can, okay? So when you're being missional, you have to understand a culture and inhabit it as much as you can. So if someone is living on YouTube, yes, when they become a Christian, you might need to say, it would be really good if you weren't living there the whole of your life. Let me help you to gain a foothold in a physical reality. I'm going to make you climb a mountain, I'm going to put your phone in a bag, or whatever it takes. But when you are going on a missionary journey, if this is where they live, then you need to live there. Does that make sense? You need to inhabit the space they're in. This is what the missionaries used. They got it in a. If I was sending you all to China tomorrow, you would work out what to do. You'd do some study. You'd work out about clothes. You'd work out about language. You'd work out about the way that they lived their lives, and you'd try to inhabit that culture to reach them. And then you'd work out what in that culture is a challenge to the Christian faith that then needs to be discipled. But sometimes we put the hurdles in before someone's come to faith. So design matters. Well, that's okay. We've got some great young designers. We could release them to be missional. So this is why this looks like this. is because the only thing that really, as long as they could read it easily, this is NIVR, which means reading age 9 to 10, they wanted to read it easily and it needed to look great. Well, okay, we can do that, can't we? We can do that. Okay, we'll do that. We will make it easy to read and we'll make sure it looks like it's something you would like to take away. So we'll get somebody who's younger to sort that out for us. The same with these. These are our latest little, it's our latest little kind of tract. For want of a better word, tract. Definitely don't use that with a, but anyway. For those of us a certain age, it's a tract. But this is, again, I gave this to some 14-year-old girls in Wimbledon, and as I handed it over to them, they went, oh, that's beautiful, excellent. Do you see? I've got you more, there's more chance you're going to take that away and treasure it and read it, because it looks nice. Why am I handing you something that you wouldn't like the look of? That's going in the bin, isn't it? Yeah. So that's one of the things we do. So we try to work it out, but I absolutely love the fact that reading the Bible comes out so high when it comes to finding out about the Christian faith. I think it's because people want to read, think about it by themselves, and then come back. Does that make sense? Also, Google, you do that by yourself. YouTube, you often do this by yourself, don't you? You are exploring the Christian faith as an individual, and then you come back. Have any of you had people join your church because they've watched you for 3 months online? It's about 3 months, isn't it? Who knows why, but it is about 3 months. People tend to follow us for about 3 months before they actually rock up in person. What questions are people asking? These all resonated with a younger generation more than an older generation, so we'll look at that slide. The 18 to 24-year-olds are what will make me happy. You can see this none of the above. Only 6% of the 18 to 24-year-olds ticked none of the above. So the question, we got these from Alpha, because we worked in partnership with Alpha, EA, CV Global, Kingsgate Church. Somebody's missing Lewis Palau on us to do this research. I read it all and wrote the report, but we all chipped in. 6%, none of the above. So you can see these questions resonated way more with the younger generation. They did not resonate so much with an older generation. The older generation are not asking, what should I do with my life?
Sorry, what are the questions?
I will read them out to you. Is there purpose to life? No, that's great. Is there purpose to life? 10%, but 22% of the younger generation was asking, what will make me happy? What will make me happy? 19%, again, of the 18 to 24-year-olds were asking, what should I do with my life? Will everything be okay? It's a big question. People feeling uncertain about that. 17% of the 18 to 24-year-olds were asking, what happens when I die? That's a big question. But only 1% were asking, is there a God? 1% were asking, is there a God? Can you see where we might have to start? Yeah? So we actually need to start not with, is there a God, because it's not the question that they're asking. We might need to start with, what will make me happy? What should I do with my life? Will everything be okay? What happens when you die? Does that make sense? It's a different set of questions. Great. Then, one of the best things we need to know is, can we talk with people about Jesus? We're going to have some really exciting little bits of news on the younger generation in a minute. But 53% of all ages know a practicing Christian. And this gets higher, but I haven't got it. That's strange. Yes. How do they know a practicing Christian? Most of the younger adults, it does get a bit higher if you're a younger adult, not lower. Most of it is a friend to friend. So 41% of the 18 to 24-year-olds say that they know a practicing Christian. This is the non-Christians. This is the people who tick non-Christian. 41% of all of the non-Christians who are aged 18 to 24 in the UK know someone who, 53% of them know a practicing Christian, but 41% of that in their brain, it is someone who is their age bracket. Okay? It is their peers that they know. So this tells us something about the peer-to-peer that's really important. If you're in that age bracket, you have an incredibly open mission field, more open than any of us have in our age bracket. So more people in that age bracket, so they're in touch with you, but it's more peer, some of it's family, but it's distinctly peer-to-peer. So it's not that we can't help if we're older, because a lot of them do want help with some of those big questions, but there is something about the front line that is really like the girl on the bus with her friend. So it's empowering everybody in that age bracket to be really good. We asked how old the person was that they knew who was a practicing Christian. And 57% of the 18 to 24-year-olds, the Christian that they thought of was 18 to 24.
That's wonderful.
It is, isn't it? And that's the non-Christians telling me this. So the non-Christians know an active Christian, and they are in their age bracket. That tells us something else, that age bracket are not silent. That age bracket are not silent, and they're very present. They were also, when we looked at who was talking the most, they were also talking the most. They were talking more than any other generation about their faith. Isn't that exciting? Do you know we had this term called the missing generation? So I've said they're not missing. That we need to drop that phrase. This group is not missing. They're really present, and they're making themselves count. So if of that generation, well done. You are really present, and they're making themselves count. And we've got to drop that term, missing generation. It isn't true. Slight interlude. But you can also see, if you're 65 plus, you are 61% likely to know the person you think of is in your generation. And that's partly to do with the way, you know how we do school? The way a lot of how we do life is we are quite generationally in the UK. We quite operate in generational cohorts, and our friendship circles are often not very cross-generational. So we're operating in generational cohorts. It doesn't mean that we can't cross, but we would again have to be intentionally countercultural to reach someone of a different generation, because we're operating a lot in generational cohorts. What do people think of us? Okay, so we're going to move on to this one. They like us. But let's check if that's the same for 18 to 24-year-olds. And then we're going to check them against other ages. I'll have to read this, you'll never see it. Basically, the number one is people think we're friendly. So, of all ages, 62% think we're friendly. Of the younger generation, 56% think the person that they thought of is friendly. They think they're caring at 39%. They think they're generous at 32%. They think they're authentic at 17%. Basically, we get a positive rap, both whether we're young or whether we're old. Please clap the person next to you. Excellent. You might think that's really crazy, but it's really important. If they know you, they like you. And it's really powerful particularly in that generation. So we've learned this, they are not missing, they're really connected, and our active Christians in that age bracket are on it, and they're really connected. There is as many of them as there are us when it comes to being an active, practicing follower of Jesus, and they are more vocal, and their generation, actually, as many of their generation know one of them as they do of other generations. Beginning to see something here, aren't we? Has this Christian ever talked to you about your faith? If you come to a younger generation, 62% of the 18 to 24-year-olds have had a conversation with that Christian. This is the non-Christians. Have had a conversation with that Christian about their faith in Jesus Christ. Just going to say that again. 62% of those 18 to 24-year-olds who know and actually have had a conversation with that Christian about Jesus Christ. It's actually 55% when you put all ages in. Who's leading the way? So, it's actually very exciting when you look at that, isn't it? So this is all, we have been told one thing, but when we're looking at the actual facts, we're receiving a different story. How are the conversations going? We're going to love this one. So, the non-Christians with a practicing Christian, 75% of them felt comfortable. This is all ages. 33% of them wanted to know more about Jesus. Admittedly, 60% didn't. I'll take 1 in 3 people. 36% were open to an encounter or experience with Jesus Christ. I'm just going to say that again. 36% of the non-Christians who had a conversation with someone like you or me were open to an experience or an encounter with Jesus Christ. that to them. What do you think? So I think it goes a bit like this. We kind of edge out there like me on the tube. And sometimes even when they're we discover they're a non-Christian and there's someone that we know, because often this is in friend, we edge out there, we've had a reasonable conversation, and then we think, better back off for a bit now. And then they're like, okay. One amazing couple who I love, who are really good at mission, a neighbour of theirs, her husband died, and so they had her round for coffee, she's a neighbour. Then they ran a craft evening. So she came round for the craft evening, even though I don't know whether she did craft. Then they thought they'd have her round for supper. And then eventually, I don't know how, she said, what do I have to do to get an invite to your church? I've been for the coffee, I've tried the craft activity, I'm not very good with glue, and now I've had it, but what do I actually have to, I just like to come to church with you. Oh, derp. We are funny, aren't we? We just edge along really carefully, don't know. But do you know what, and I think that's something that, again, I think the younger generation are bolder than us on, would you like to come to church with me? Yeah, great, thanks. They just rock up with them. Hi, yeah, hi. We're like, oh, don't upset the apple cart. So this is showing us something here. It's like, it's not everybody, and this is the non-Christians who remained a non-Christian. If the non-Christian has a conversation and becomes a Christian, they're obviously answering my survey as a Christian. So that's why. So this is really positive. Let's have a look at a younger generation. So a younger generation of the 18 to 24-year-olds, 47% of them, after that conversation, wanted to know more about Jesus. Isn't that exciting? Yeah. This generation is not missing, people. They are present, and so many of their friends and peers are open. 47% is almost 50-50 want to know more about Jesus. It makes things like Amplify. We train up an academy of young evangelists that we're part of called Amplify. They're the under 18s, and some of them are starting CUs in schools. They're running alpha courses. And one head teacher said, I've got to experience it first. I need to see what you're doing. You can see what happened there, can't you? And just the sheer excitement of releasing this generation. 47% of them wanted to know more about Jesus. And 39% were open to an experience or an encounter. 46% of the 25 to 34-year-olds were open to an experience or an encounter. Isn't that exciting? Yeah. There is something about the younger generation which is open and hungry. There are two factors going on here. One of them is, so when I worked in the Church of England, we did a huge piece of work, and we worked with a professor, somebody or other. If you look at everybody up to the age of 25, that's when we're still deciding what we're going to do and who we're going to be and what we're going to follow. That's just how we are as human beings. You get past 25, you get more set in your ways. But there are things that can move that. I'm going to skip through all these I'm moving to this one. A life event is the thing that once you're over 18 will have the biggest impact on whether or not you come to faith. Okay, so once you've got to 18, lots of people come to faith before the age of 18. If you get to 18, it's a life event. We've been through a whole series of life events as a nation. And it's that and the fact that these people are under the age of 25 and still deciding what they think about life, that combination of things that has made them really open to the gospel. This happened after the World Wars. So if you look at church history and you see some of the really big ups where people came to faith, it was things like after World Wars. The pandemic, wars in Ukraine, even the riots will have had an impact on making people feel that the world that there is insecure. Now, I don't want those things to happen, but when they do, they actually give us an openness to the gospel, particularly when you're older, because they wobble the world and foundation that you're standing on, and they give us an opportunity. So, the big summary is very simple. If you are aged 18 to 24, you're more open to the gospel of Jesus Christ than any other generation. And it isn't just peer-to-peer, but we would need to make an intentional cultural move if we're going to reach them and we're of a different generation. Does that make sense? So back those people that are and ask them what we could do together. What do they need to reach that generation, and how might we do? It won't be for me to work out what that looks like. It will be for me to bless that age bracket. My nephew's really into the creatives. We had a huge art expedition, well, they call it an expo, a huge art expo where all our artists and creatives got together. They have writing groups, they have, you name it, photography groups. They have every type of creative group because for them, for many in that is something that they want to communicate through their creativity to that generation. Great, how can I back you? You take your skills and communicate to your generation, and I will get behind you 100%. If I can serve you and put up something that I've done, I'll do that. But did you see a lot of the ideas? So how can I work with you to do this? But even if you stand on the street, I guarantee you, even if you go door to door, if you go door to door, they're much more likely to say yes. They want to read a Bible at the moment. That's just what's happening. We've seen that in the door-to-door. There's quite a few people who've done stats on door-to-door. Out of 10 homes, three homes took a Bible. 3 homes said no. 3 homes weren't even in. So we don't even know what would have happened if they had been in. I mean, would you take those odds, people? Yeah. That's crazy. We gave up on that. Don't want to do that. Don't look like a JW. Have you seen what the JWs are currently advertising? Has anyone seen what they're currently doing on the streets at the moment?
Free courses.
Free, and what is the course in? Have any of you seen it? Bible. Free Bible courses. People really want to know about the Bible. So if you stand out there with a free Bible course, people are likely to come and talk to you. I've watched, and people stop and talk to them. So I'm just like, oh my word! And we're all like, well, we want to go gently. Don't want to offend anyone. I'm telling you, the tide will have turned by the time we need to re-find our boldness and courage. I went out with the Wild Hope team, Wimbledon. This is where I sat on a bench and just chatted to people on the bench. We had buckets. This was hilarious. There's a whole pile of things you could do. You're going to think I've gone mad. So if you wanted some tips on just going out on the street, wherever you live, in the middle of your streets, I can list you a few. You could do a Bible survey. That will often get people to, at the end of it, they often go, I want to read the Bible with you. Great, do that. Who would like to read the Bible with somebody who doesn't yet know Jesus? YWAM had to stop doing that survey because they couldn't find anyone who was a Christian who had the time to read the Bible with somebody who wasn't a Christian.
Whereas the JW will make the time.
Yes. Do you see the problem? So it's like, yeah, I'd love to read. Let's do it. We could just stand on the street, the whole stack of Bibles. You can have conversations with. And he said, oh, my word, it was so embarrassing. We had a table with a yellow tablecloth. We had Bibles on it. We were doing a survey. You would think nobody would stop. But particularly younger generation, they want to know about it. But great, you'll hear about the Bible. Let me talk about the Bible. I've got questions about the Bible. Oh, have you? Right, wow, a bit surprised about that. Then we had buckets. We had a bucket with a bucket on fire. That was a good one. And then another bucket with promises from the Bible. And what you do is you write something you want to get rid of on one piece of paper, something you'd like to say goodbye to. It is something that's been done to you, something that you have done, or anything in your life you want to say goodbye to, that you want to give to Jesus, because Jesus can take it away. Really emotional. We had people really emotional. You drop that in the burning bucket, and you pick up a promise from Jesus. Well, great conversation starter, even with the police who came to see why there was a bucket burning on the high street. But we kind of gave up on that. So I really do feel that we've got a call now, because there is an open generation, that if we stand with them and go with them and help release them, that there is a mighty harvest coming in that generation. So, they're not missing, they're present. They're not closed, they're seriously open. And we need to stand with them and find ways to reach that generation. And we need to throw everything we've got at it. Because I honestly think there's a turning in the tide. That what they have been given is so false and broken that they are hungry for something else. And that is, we can help them find Jesus. Marvellous. Right, and if you want to find out more about Hope, you can. We have a website somewhere, which I've probably left in my room. I have flyers that you can, I'll bring some of those this evening. So we'd love to stay in touch with you so you can find out more about what we're doing. If you are under the age of 18, you could join our Amplify Academy. It is amazing. If you are over the age of 18, you're between 18 and about 30, you could join Wild Hope in the summer, and that will equip you to be on the streets. It's phenomenal. And it's really exciting, just getting out there, doing street mission, and getting set on fire for Jesus. And if you're over that age bracket, don't worry. We've got lots of other things that you can also get involved with.